Uh, Welcome, everyone. Uh, Welcome, Tiffany. I am here today. We're going to be discussing the future of the Democratic Party, Biden's chances in this upcoming general election, and things along that nature. Tiffany is a juris doctorate, also we consider ourselves sisters. Let's go forward. You had something you wanted to bring up very particularly.
Um, well, I have to say I'm very proud of my state and feel a unusual amount, all things considered, of pride in my country right now that Uncommitted made such a huge showing. I knew it was going to be big. I didn't know it was going to be as big as it was, and I'm very happy and pleased and hopeful for the future that it means that we can depend on people in this country to recognize the need for change.
Yeah, we have a huge turnout that seemed to have caught Biden's eye for a moment. He said there was a red line with Israel and then backed down from it because he has no actual intention of actually doing anything of substance. And it doesn't seem that Netanyahu really gives a shit, whether Biden stays in power or not.
Well, why
Uh,
should he? Because Biden's backed down from every red line that he's drawn. I was surprised that the Biden administration did, for all their crap, manage to write a ceasefire resolution, and it would have passed if it hadn't been for Russia and China. But they've been pushing back hard enough that Israel's actually said we will do this with or without United States support. But the reality is that what you're telling people is we don't actually care if you commit genocide. We only actually care that it's impacting our votes, and we were too full of ourselves, full of hubris to actually listen to the voting public until we saw the votes. And now that we've seen you actually mean what you say, well, shit. I can't afford to lose Pennsylvania, and I'm already losing Michigan. Damn. I guess those brown people do count. So now he finds himself in the position of really being in political trouble, which is, to say the least, fantastic. Dare I hope that the Democrats might actually have learned something, um, even if it's a little something that they'll forget very quickly. But you can't keep telling people that the reason to vote for us is because who the hell else you're going to vote for. It's going to get old, even in circumstances like these. And the reality is, Biden would have had a hard time even without this, but with his actions with the Palestinians, I don't even understand what the Democrats were thinking. So I think now they realize that they seriously screwed up, and I think they're going to see that it doesn't really matter how much Biden changes now, because what people wanted out of him was to actually care about these people, not just shift based on um, the threat of not getting elected.
was that Finn?
That was my cat.
Which one? You have no idea which cat. Okay.
Claudius. He wants to be fed, and the dog sniffed his foot. So
So he freaked out. Okay.
yes.
But I think that what they really don't realize is that how much goes into getting a lot of these votes that they feel are just granted to them. They're taking people for granted that they're even going to vote at all. And you saw, like in Georgia, Stacey Abrams churned out the vote saying Biden's going to do this, Biden's going to do this, Biden's going to do this. Of course, he didn't actually do those things, and so people aren't turning out again, but you are looking at a lot of people who are in bad situations. If you live in a high crime area, a lot of people go get their IDs stolen, get their social security card stolen at the same time. It becomes a big hurdle to try to get an ID again. You're looking at several days worth of effort to do that. You go look at these inner city polling places and people are waiting like most of the day to vote. When you have that little voting area, it's not, these are people in the suburbs who are going out and, oh, I have my ID, I always have it on me. Oh, I can, I go out and vote, takes me 15, 30 minutes, something like that. That is not the experience that everyone has. And not everyone can get off work that kind of time to even vote. You're asking for a lot of people a huge hurdle for them to come out. You have to give them an actual reason that they're going to do that. They're not going to do it by default. If if you have that kind of barrier, you need that motivation, and the motivation can't be just Donald Trump is a piece of shit. Because
I think we're at a place where people are looking at this rightly or wrongly. And again, that's something that I think people don't realize. It doesn't really matter whether it's right or wrong, accurate or inaccurate. It is what it is. A lot of people are looking at this as, I survived one Trump presidency, I'll survive the next, which don't know that that's to be the case, because he can't run again. He may not want to leave. We already, as my partner would say, the greatest prediction of a successful coup is an unsuccessful coup. So, we might not, don't know. But bottom line is that the Democrats, if they want to win, they have to run somebody else. They cannot win with Biden. First of all, he can't win Michigan. It's impossible. He has lost the Arab and Muslim vote. He will not win Michigan without them. And a good portion of people of color outside of Arab Americans are standing in solidarity and also feeling disillusioned. He's not going to win Georgia this time. Whatever promises he made, and it seems to be very localized, whatever promises he made in Georgia, he's not going to win the vote in Georgia. He's neck and neck in Pennsylvania now, with highly unlikely to win. People of color are not coming out for him like they did. And they're disillusioned and they're angry. And young people and progressives definitely don't want anything to do with him. It's not just his Israeli policy. If you look back through Biden's timeline, the people that he shit on the most are all people of color. The Afghans, the Kurds, Black people in this country, and Latinx people at the border. His border policy isn't any better than Donald Trump's was.
No,
I guess he doesn't have an active policy when you find someone, drag the children out of their arms, but he's half a step away from that. He's deported more immigrants than Donald Trump did. So, and he was only too happy to work with the Republicans. So anything that he can do if he's going to shit on somebody, he's going to shit on brown people. And, brown people have kind of had it. So, they've kind of had it. And he has no courage of his convictions. He says one thing to Netanyahu, and then he continues to allow Netanyahu to do it. He looks weak, as Mrs. Slocum would say, weak as water. He comes off as feeble and pathetic. The governor of Texas, the Supreme Court sided with the Democrats, and that this is not something you're allowed to do. And Biden's like, we'll just let him do it anyway. Why would he's got one reason for people to vote for him. I'm not as scary as Donald Trump. And he's not as scary as Donald Trump, unless you happen to be Palestinian.
He not only did not do anything about it, his response was to push through the most aggressive and xenophobic immigration bill we have seen in the past, 100 years? That was his response. He said, "Hey, I want to work with Republicans to shut the border," and that is not a winning message. He keeps trying to go towards the middle, where he's, there. What middle is left? You have people who are fucking fascists, and then you have, right to the right, you got the conservatives who are voting for Biden already. His problem is he can't turn out the vote of people who are on his left. Even he has a major strike that's about to happen during his presidency, and he chooses, oh, let's shut down the strike. We're going to prevent the workers from getting what they wanted. And that was the railroad workers. How long did it take? Just a couple days before you had a major accident that happened because of what the workers wanted to get rid of. They wanted more safety. They wanted time off for being sick, because that means that they could take better, control of the trains. That is Biden's legacy. Everyone wants to try to say he did all these good things. He really didn't.
I mean, we're not in a recession or a depression, which in and of itself is a damn miracle. So, I mean, I guess he did that right. He passed some fantastic environmental bills and then rolled it all back. So I don't think you can really give him credit for it. So it was like, well, okay, this upsets you guys. He did do some good things for the LGBTQA community, but he rolled back on about 20-30% of that. I don't know. This is what I know. I know that it really doesn't matter what else you've done or what else you haven't done. Genocide is wrong. Mm-hmm. And what you're telling me is that you have absolutely no morals at all. Not that you lack morals, but that you're amoral. You have none. You're not interested. The only reason he's changed his tune on Israeli policy to the extent that he has is because he sees now that people are serious. We actually meant it, that we weren't going to vote for him. Oh my. In general, I think that a lot of people like myself are just really sick of being I'm going to vote for the lesser evil. And it's like you can tell yourself that over and over and over again, only so many times when the lesser evil is still committing genocide, it becomes it's only a lesser evil if I'm not those people. And, at first they came for the trade unionists, as the poem goes. It's the reality is if he's willing to do this to the Palestinians, he's willing to do this to anybody. He doesn't have an issue with Palestinians. He doesn't care. He would turn on anybody the second he realizes it's going to be politically beneficial. So it's if you have morals, if you have, you're going to have a hard time in this election. I'm not angry with people. I'm still not angry with people for their fears of Trump and voting for him, because Trump is a very good reason to be afraid. He really, truly is. It's a good reason to be afraid. It's not stupid. But when you look at Biden, if you can't at least say to yourself, what he's doing is funding a genocide, then you really have to question your own morals and whether or not you actually care about equity, equality, the right to live, or if you just care about your own privilege.
And mind you that over my lifetime, I have seen the lesser evil move so far to the right that they're worse than the actual greater evil that they originally starting, trying to work against. Originally, you had Ronald Reagan was that greater evil that you were going to vote for, Carter for, you're going to vote for Mondale for, and it just, they moved so far to the right that they moved to the right of Reagan on most policies. They picked up his neoliberal ideology and embraced it. And so over the long term, voting the lesser evil is not a winning strategy. It really is something that we should have, gone and done something better long before Trump was ever an issue. But I think there is one way that you can still see Biden win. And that's despite Trump not losing people when he's going way off the bandwagon, saying he wants a national abortion ban. He coming doubling down on the anti-trans stuff. I mean, everything that has been proven to be a loser, and still he's beating Biden. But what you need is the bunch of people who are not neoliberals, people who are influencers who are saying you got to vote for Biden because he's a lesser evil. You want people to actually do that, you need to give them an exit strategy. It can't just be, oh, it's going to be worse if Trump gets in, so let's go do this. You have to give them a view of something better. And what I see that as is the promise that after this election, the Democratic Party is dead. None of them are supporting the Democrats anymore. No matter, they could put out AOC as the candidate, they're not backing them, not under the Democratic Party banner. And instead, they have to be working towards creating an alternative party, not just another third party to throw out there. I am thinking of a coalition party that no individual is allowed to be a member of. You only have political parties join that political party. That way they all keep their membership that they traditionally would lose when people, went into some big sudden movement and then just get sucked into the Democratic Party. And overall, you have the separate thing. They're going to have to pool their ballot lines, work to share the space. It's got to be all just left-wing parties to make this work, because you need to find something where they all think that in the meantime, while we're working on this, things are going to get better. And so they're going to have to run a minimalist strategy. You run like Bernie Sanders. That kind of policy is the economic and social policy that you're going to see in the interim. But you're looking at a long-term strategy. It's going to take 2 to 3 elections to get the votes to actually change the electoral system altogether. That means proportional representation, it's not called single transferable vote, instant runoff voting, single transferable votes when you mix that in with proportional representation. But you have both of those where you no longer are stuck with having to vote the lesser of two evils ever. That right there is something that you might be able to get people behind. If you can make Biden palatable enough in the interim that he is taking some actual action to stop the genocide, get some credibility there. And he has to go further now than he had to if he had just listened originally, even to the original uncommitted vote in Michigan. If he took action then and stuck with it, he wouldn't have to go as far pro-Palestinian as he has to do now. But if you get Biden there and you're able to, everyone saying we're done with the Democratic Party, and create some real hope for something better coming up, it's possible Biden can win and Trump can lose. Oh, we just lost her, and I'm sure she's going to be back in just a moment. Okay, yeah, it crashed. They're having router problems. So I'm sure she'll be back in a moment. We can carry on. Okay, so anyways, let me go a little bit more detail that's less vital to what I was thinking. And yeah, that comes down to, what do you want to call it? You could call it the third party. I'm partial to the idea of calling it the Yellow Turban Party. I did create the um, Yellow Turban Tribune a while back. This is ancient China, Han Dynasty. When it fell, you had at the very end a peasant revolt called the Yellow Turban Rebellion. And their whole thing is the blue sky has fallen, the yellow sky is rising. Blue represent the Han. I think that is very applicable here, where blue sky in this case is the Democratic Party. Democratic Party has fallen, the yellow sky is rising. I think that would be a great way to start it out. But the point being, you have to get the majority of both let's see here, this causing her problems. But you run into the problem that the Democrats have no incentive to get rid of the system. Right now, they are someone who are going to lose tons and tons of votes if people have alternatives that have a fair chance of winning. And we have multiple aspects going in that actually cause this problem. First off, we are looking at, the system itself is first past the post, winner take all. That tends towards two parties. You can have the parties change. The parties can vary based on regional area. But you tend towards two parties in any given race. Second is you have a whole bunch of media bias that keeps reinforcing the idea that it's Democrats or Republicans. Those are your two options. So you don't really have the grip that for a third party to rise. We did have third parties rise before. The Republican Party knocked out the Whigs over 2 elections. There is definitely and they were the left-wing party at that point in time. And it's something that can happen again, but not something that is going to happen without a large-scale effort. Because you always have the problem that people assume the third party can't win, and you have a knock-on effect. Once they get a certain percentage of people, that's enough that other people will start supporting them, and so on, and you keep going up till you finally have where they're the lesser evil for the Democrats to vote for. It is something that is a long-term scale because you have to not only win the House, you have to win the Senate, which take at least 2 elections to do. Because you only have about 1/3 of the seats up at any one time. You have to win over the state legislatures. You have to most likely get governors so that you can get the amendments passed to actually alter the Constitution. So it is something that's going to take a little while, but that's why you have a policy for how you're going to govern in the meantime, while you may have just the House, or you might just have the presidency, or however it may be. But you aren't going to get the House, the Senate, and the presidency all at once, even if you get 100% of the vote, because of the way that the Senate is structured. Okay, she says she's trying to sign in. And so that is the idea behind this construct to try to move forward. But it needs a whole lot of movement. It needs the movement going now to say, we'll vote one last time, but then we're out. Doesn't matter what you do. You can promise full luxury space communism. Not enough. Democratic Party is dead after 2024. That is something that needs to come, and needs to come not from neoliberals who just reorganize into the same type of party. It needs to come from people who are actually left liberals, who are social democrats and that are on the fringes of the Democratic Party, they need to get behind and start peddling this message, because they have the ability, the actual followers who might actually follow through. And that means everyone joining third parties so that they can coalesce, and you have to get these third parties to get together and actually form that single party that's going to run the ballot line. That does mean that some parties are going to lose ballot access with the way the laws are currently written. But it's worth it if it's, you're getting rid of those ballot access laws before the party actually dissolves. Because once you pass it, who here she is, once you actually pass that, then you actually have the party will dissolve and you have all the different third parties take over. But now I think you were there for most of what we were going through. So you seem a bit frozen right now.
Mm-mm.
You're moving very, very slowly.
Any better?
I can hear you at least.
That's something.
Yeah, now you heard what I was saying before you got knocked off. I think you heard the most important part. What were your thoughts on the idea of having the death of the Democratic Party happen with 2024 as a promise in exchange for extending Biden's presidency for 4 more years?
I think if you could get people to believe it, and believe that they would actually carry through with it, that they would do it. I think your hardest part of it, I think it would definitely be something that appealed to people. I think the hardest thing that you could possibly do is part of it would be to get people to actually believe it, because as you said yourself, Biden said he wouldn't run again, and here he is running again, based on the irony was that he's running because he knows that Trump must be beaten, and he's the only person who can't beat him, or who supposedly can beat him, but the reality is he can't beat him. Like, it's not just the polls. People will say, well, the polls have been wrong quite a bit. Well, whatever, but maybe they are, maybe they aren't, whatever. The polls have been wrong. Okay, but you know what's not wrong? What's not wrong is that there's no way in hell that man is winning Michigan. Never going to happen. He's not going to win Michigan if the Arab vote alone is enough. And then you have Minnesota, where the Muslim vote is huge, and the progressive vote in Minneapolis is huge. He's not going to win Georgia. He's unlikely to win Pennsylvania. What is his path to victory outside of promising that we'll have a coalition government and moving on to something more progressive? I agree. They've been moving further and further and further to the right, and they've lost the left, and they don't listen. It's like they've gotten to this point where they are so convinced of their right to rule that they don't really hear their electorate. They don't really recognize that the base has changed. I mean, Nancy Pelosi made the comment that if you disagree with supporting Israel, then you're a Russian plant. I mean, that's what she said. You think that might have isolated a few people?
I think it would isolate a lot of people. I think the hard push that they made early on, that you can't even use the word ceasefire, isolated a lot of people. I think that the general way that they tend to talk down to people, that is very paternalistic. You have to vote for us because what else are you going to do?
Yes.
That is something that turns people away.
Yes, it's definitely turning Black voters away. Black voters are as turned off as they've ever been by a Democratic candidate. He's at like 60% right now with the Black electorate, and it's because it's this attitude of, well, who else are you going to vote for? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that I owed you my vote. His entire philosophy on why he should be elected is antithetical to democratic principles. And
what he did in the election, he told Dean Phillips' whole crew, everybody who worked for him, you'll never work for another Democrat again because you dare to work for a campaign that was working against Biden. That right there, it's like, how are you the Democratic Party? You're moving closer and closer to fascism yourself. How long until it's the Nazi Democratic Party running against the Republican Party that's gone so far right that they're yelling that Hitler was a cuck?
Well, I would be willing to wager if you ask the Palestinians, they would say they're already there. It's at this point we have over 30,000 dead Palestinians that we know of, the vast majority of which are children. That's what we know of. That has nothing to do with the bodies trapped underneath rubble that are beyond recognition at this point. There's no hospitals, there's no food, there's no clean water. They're mixing their children's food with animal feed because that's all there is left. These are people who are literally eating hay to attempt to survive. A woman ran out to an aid truck to go get flour. When she came back, her home had been bombed with all her family inside of it. There was nothing but rubble. It had been bombed to the extent that she couldn't even find the bones of her family. She ran out to find flour. They're existing on the equivalent of a piece of bread a day. And half of what's in that so-called bread, again, is animal feed. If this isn't genocide, then nothing is.
They had just leaked the video where an Israeli drone went two flybys to kill 4 Palestinians who were just simply walking down the road, obviously not carrying weapons and all that.
Oh, it gets better. They went in the West Bank and they went and Israel has taken more land than they've had. They've taken the biggest chunk of land at one time from Palestinians, I think since like 1999 or something, in the West Bank. So, I mean, the whole point of this was always to take the land from the Palestinians. That was always the point. It had nothing to do with Israeli security, nothing to do with safety for Jews, nothing to do with people being kidnapped, evidenced by the fact that they killed their own hostages. So, you know, they went and they took several miles of land away from Palestinians and ran them out onto a smaller piece of land onto the West Bank. This is about genocide and making sure that Palestinians are dead, and to the ones that are still alive, that they're not there, that they're someplace else. This is about genocide and ethnic cleansing, which you yourself have said is a form of genocide. That's what this is.
And once they leave, Israel never lets them back in.
No, they will never let them back in.
Another war crime.
Mm-hmm. They will never let them back in. You know, I can't support that. Nor can I pretend for 1 second that this is not genocide. And I have to say, I'm rather upset that so many people are still finding a way to excuse this and say, well, you know, Netanyahu is this, Netanyahu is that. But, you know, Biden can't control Netanyahu. But you could stop giving him guns and you know, money. You could stop doing that part. You know, if you stopped giving him 2,000-pound bombs to drop, maybe, you know, we wouldn't be where we're at.
That's a start, but I still think the proper way to respond when this whole thing started is when Biden went and said, we have American citizens there, let us get them out before you start bombing. And Netanyahu said, no, he won't do it. At that point, he could have bombed the hell out of the Israeli Air Force and justified it under the Constitution as defending American national interests. The lives of our citizens is in our national interest. That is what he should have done, and brought Israel down to its knees and say, no, that's not happening. That would be the right thing to do. Biden went so far away from the right thing to do.
Yeah, he's funding a genocide. It's as far away from the right thing to do as you can possibly get.
Well, there is
And
one
that's funny
step
because now that
further.
now he wants to make a
Actively
hard left
participating.
and change his policy, as if anybody can't see through what that's about. Nobody cares if you change your policy, and at this point, you have too many dead for it to matter. So you know what? Great, you've changed your policy. You're not actually going to do anything. Nobody gives a shit. I don't give a shit. I don't care.
If he declared war on Israel, I think that would be enough that people say, okay, you're taking it seriously at least.
Yeah, which he won't. I
don't
mean,
know how much short of that he could possibly go and people take it seriously.
no, I think you're correct. I think you're absolutely accurate. I don't think that's being histrionic. I think short of declaring war, there is nothing he could possibly do to convince people that he is taking this seriously. I think he's gotten to the point there's too many dead. It doesn't matter.
At this point, the best thing the Democratic Party could do, which isn't necessarily the best thing that I think that we should do, but what the Democratic Party should do is Biden should step down, say, okay, I made a mistake. I'm not going to run, and throw all his delegate support behind someone like AOC, somebody that they know is.
They could run Newsom. They could run Newsom and he would win. He would slide in over Trump easily. You know, it's not. I'm not even talking about whether or not I like Newsom or not. I'm talking about who could win, and he could easily win. If they ran Newsom, he'd win in 10 minutes. You know, Harris chance of winning than Biden does. And again, I don't like Harris, but I definitively dislike Harris. I disliked Harris when she ran to begin with. I never liked her. You know,
Well, you're cutting out. You're cutting out.
My internet is unstable. My internet is unstable. Yes, very stable genius, as Trump would say. Yeah, it's bad. He's not going to win. You know, my number one argument with Biden apologists at this point is that it really doesn't matter. We can argue all day on whether or not he's responsible for this. But the bottom line is he's got no path to victory. And you cannot turn to populations that he has caused such great levels of loss and grief in and say, well, it's still better for us and it's better for guilt them by telling them it's better for your children if you vote for him. That doesn't make them feel any better when you blew up their mother. You know, it just doesn't. These are deeply traumatized people who are never going to get to bury their dead because they're in pieces all over the place. These are deeply traumatized people. They really don't give a shit. And trying to have a discussion with them that, well, you know, Trump's not going to be any kinder. No, he's not going to be any kinder. He might kill them faster. But Biden's not killing. Death is death. So Trump will have a faster genocide than Biden, but it's still genocide. And that's how they're looking at it. And that's how I look at it too.
Yep, it's definitely not looking good. I don't think Harris could win. I think that she's been too poisoned by just doing whatever Biden said to go out and say for the past 4 years.
She's certainly not well liked, not well received by any community that I can see. I don't think she's got a good chance of winning. I think she's got a better chance than Biden. That's as best as I can put it. I also think she's the most likely person for them to run. I don't know why the Democrats pick the dumbest candidates. Hillary, Biden, Gore, they love to pick the worst possible candidates that they possibly could. Dukakis, oh my God. You know, like
titles.
They love to pick terrible candidates. They're terrified of running anybody on the left. You know, whereas if they just ran somebody on the left, they would win hands down.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at just what happened with Trump. Trump, you know, for how long did the Republicans think the same way? You got centrist.
Now you're breaking up and you're frozen.
Okay, I see both of us and on my side.
You're moving now.
Okay. Just in case, well, yep, here anyways. But you can look at Trump. for the longest time, the Republicans are the same way, where they're saying only a centrist can win. If you go too far to the right, you're not going to win. Trump was able to mobilize a base.
Mhm.
The Democrats could do that with the left too. The
Mhm.
problem is that people like Biden, people who have control of the party, don't want the left to win.
No, they're
actually
too
trying to
old.
compete with Nazis.
They're too male, they're too straight, they're too cisgender, and they're too white. They're stuck in a decade that is long since past, where they live in a world, and I mean, and it's, people don't want to talk about it, but Biden sits there and he calls leaders names that existed in the 90s, people who haven't been alive since like the year 2000. And he refers to them. I just got off the phone with this dead guy. And it's like, because he lives in a decade that doesn't exist anymore.
He's a medium.
Do you know?
Or he's a medium, one or the other.
Do you know the White House doesn't have a phone that could talk to ghosts?
What'd you say?
Do you know that the White House doesn't have a phone that can talk to ghosts?
It doesn't have a phone?
That can talk to ghosts.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think he is a medium. It's not a skill I think he has. Maybe I'm wrong, but still, even if he is having a conversation with these dead people, they're not in control. He seems to have forgotten that. He has these discussions with dead people all the time. It's starting to look like the movie. He's completely confused. He doesn't know what the hell is going on, and to the extent that he does, he makes terrible decisions.
I got on the phone with Margaret Thatcher and got her endorsement.
He couldn't remember the day his own son died.
Oh, he's definitely going senile. I mean, Trump is senile too.
Trump is senile too. Yes, it's not like I'm advocating for Trump.
Yeah.
I want to be clear here for anybody who ever watches this. It's not like I'm saying Trump is great or even better. He's definitely not better than Biden. Biden is definitely better than Trump. But, it's like, I mean, eating drinking milk that is 6 months old is definitely going to be better than drinking milk that is 6 years old, but it's still all shit and spoiled and disgusting. So you have 6-year-old milk, and then you have maybe something that's about a year old. It's still curdled, nasty, moldy shit that I don't want to imbibe. So, yes, Trump is worse. Of course he's worse. I'm not insane. But Biden is I mean, to say you're better than Trump is like, it's
better than Biden.
Syphilis is better than HIV. I mean, sure it is, but I don't want either.
Yep. If Netanyahu insults Trump, or Trump takes something he says an insult, it's not out of the question that Trump will suddenly switch positions and be completely anti-Israel. We lost her again. Well, I think we've pretty much gone through things, though, and she's having problems staying on. So we're going to call it a night at 43 minutes. And hopefully see you again. I'm sure I'll be talking with her again regarding more of this stuff coming up. And hopefully, I'm going to try to get a few other guests on as well.